4 seconds. That's all it took for the ground to open up and swallow Greg Whitlock's shiny white Lexus nose first into a black pit of dust. 4 seconds, and the street that had looked so harmless turned into a monster's mouth. And the worst part, I had warned them. I had begged them. But my warnings were painted over, mocked, and treated like trash. Until the earth decided to prove me right. My name's Tom Walker, 61 years old, retired from the Army Corps of Engineers. 30 years of dealing with collapsing bridges, unstable soil terrain that wanted to kill you if you didn't respect it. I thought I'd left that life behind when I moved to Magnolia Ridge. I thought I was done with the battles, the stress, the constant sense that danger was under my feet. But the moment I settled here, I felt it, the subtle shift in the ground after a heavy rain, the way the sidewalk cracked just a little too sharply, like the land was holding its breath. This place was never meant to hold neat beige houses and manicured fences. I did what I knew to do. I built a sign. Bright orange, bold black letters. Danger. Unstable ground. Stay off. I drove the stakes in deep, a few feet back from the weak patch. It wasn't about paranoia, it was about protecting the neighborhood kids on their bikes, the dogs chasing balls. I wasn't trying to be dramatic, I just didn't want to watch someone vanish into the earth. 2 days later, the sign was gone. Snapped in half, dumped on my porch with a sticky note about community standards. No name, but I knew. That morning I saw Karen walking her little designer dog past my driveway, her spotless white sneakers smudged with red paint. She looked right at me, gave me a tight smile, and kept walking like she'd just scrubbed graffiti off a wall. That was Karen in a nutshell. Mid-50s sharp bob haircut, neon jogging outfit, clipboard practically welded to her hand. She ran the HOA like a dictator, harassing people about grass-length trash can placement, paint shades that were too bold. Safety didn't matter to her. Appearance was everything. At the next HOA meeting, I came prepared. I handed out reports, soil samples, drone photos, diagrams. Years of training packed into paper. Karen tilted her head, smiled like I was a child, and said, "Mr. Walker, are you sure you're not exaggerating? The terrain looks visually undisturbed." Visually undisturbed, as if sinkholes give a damn about curb appeal. A week later, the HOA newsletter arrived, bright fonts and happy colors, and tucked right in the middle, a reminder that unauthorized signs or unattractive boards may result in fines. Aimed squarely at me. Then came the citations. $75 for my unauthorized structure. The structure was my warning sign, a painted board meant to save lives. I appealed. I sent certified letters with photos, timestamps, detailed notes. Nothing. Instead, Karen herself showed up one morning, snapped a picture of my front lawn, and walked away without a word. That afternoon, another citation hit my mailbox, this time for my rock border. The same border that had been there for 5 years without a problem. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood, she was declaring war. And then the whispers started. Neighbors who used to wave now crossed the street. People stopped making eye contact. I could feel them watching me, muttering as I walked by. I wasn't Tom, the retired engineer, anymore. I was the paranoid old guy. The problem. And you know what? For a moment I wondered if they were right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the soil wasn't as dangerous as I thought. Maybe decades of seeing disaster everywhere had trained me to expect ghosts where there weren't any. I caught myself thinking, maybe I should just give up. Tear down the sign, pay the fines, let it go. But then Afghanistan came back to me in a rush, standing on a collapsing airstrip because someone ignored the drainage reports. I remembered my commanding officer telling me the enemy isn't always a person. Sometimes it's a blind spot. That line stuck with me, and I realized Karen wasn't some comic book villain. She was the blind spot. And blind spots get people killed. So I doubled down. I dug through county archives, found geological surveys from the 70s showing limestone caverns under our neighborhood. I built a digital folder, cloud-backed and password-protected, filled with evidence photos, videos, time-lapse logs, even a clip of me rolling a marble downhill just to prove the slope was shifting. Call it paranoia if you want. I called it preparation. One night, my neighbor Paul knocked on my door, nervous, glancing around like he was doing something illegal. He said he'd noticed the sidewalk tilting too. He admitted he'd told Karen to reroute to stop driving over that patch, but she ignored him. Then he looked me straight in the eye and whispered, "Greg drives over that spot every morning. You know how she is. She won't listen." I knew exactly how she was. That morning I felt the earth more alive than usual. Dark patches on the ground, the sidewalk crack widening by another quarter inch. I dropped a marble and watched it shoot downhill like the ground was hollow. My stomach turned. I started recording, my phone shaking in my hand. Then I heard it, the purr of Greg's Lexus engine. Polished white, gleaming in the sun, phone pressed to his ear, sunglasses on, not even looking. I waved both arms, shouted, "Stop! Don't drive over!" He didn't see me. Or maybe he didn't care. 4 seconds. The tires dipped, the ground split, and the car disappeared nose first into the earth with a plume of dust. I ran toward the crater, heart hammering, scrambled to pull him out. He was dazed, bleeding, but alive. Neighbors came pouring out, kids crying, phones recording. And then Karen arrived, hair wild, slippers on, screaming her husband's name. When she saw me covered in dust, hands raw from pulling her husband out, her face twisted. She pointed at me and shrieked, "What did you do? You did this." That night a letter landed on my porch. Official HOA letterhead. They accused me of soil sabotage and alarmist behavior. They even attached a photo of me crouched with a marble in my hand, labeling it suspicious activity. The irony almost made me laugh. Suspicious for documenting the collapse that nearly killed her husband. They weren't searching for truth, they were shifting blame. But I was ready. I uploaded everything. The whole damn folder. A blog I called Sinkhole Truth Magnolia Ridge. Reports, surveys, videos, timestamps. I shared it with neighbors on Facebook, even sent it to the local news station. Within 48 hours it blew up. Reporters knocked on my door. City engineers showed up with radar equipment and clipboards, and the HOA had no choice but to hold an emergency town hall. That night the clubhouse felt like a courtroom. Over 100 residents packed inside. Karen stood at the front, blazer pressed, eyes sharp, trying to regain control. She thanked people for supporting Greg, then pivoted straight into denial. Called my blog misinformation, said I was exaggerating. But people had seen too much. Denise from Lot 12 stood up, voice steady. "You ignored his reports. I saw the emails." Another voice from the back shouted, "He put up a warning sign. You painted over it." Karen snapped, slamming her hand on the podium. The sign was unauthorized. This is a community governed by standards. And then Paul, quiet, anxious. Paul finally stood up. His voice shook, but it was clear. "Standards. I watched that sidewalk crack every single day. Tom was the only one who tried to protect us, and you tried to shut him up." The room erupted. People who'd been silent for months were suddenly shouting, waving citations of their own, demanding answers. It was like a dam breaking, years of resentment spilling out all at once. Karen tried to hide behind bylaws, waving papers in the air, her voice rising over the noise. But no one was listening anymore. Her power, her smug little smirk was evaporating. By the end of the night, someone called for a motion. The vote was swift, unanimous. Karen was removed as HOA president on the spot. She walked out stiff-backed, but when our eyes met, there was no triumph in her gaze. No victory smile, just fear, and maybe finally recognition. She had painted over my warnings, but she couldn't paint over the truth. The ground had swallowed her husband's car, and with it, her power. That's where my story ends. Not with celebration, not with champagne or laughter, but with Karen gone and the truth undeniable. The earth doesn't care about appearances, it only cares about being ignored. And if I learned one thing from all this, it's simple: silence is never safety.